So good morning, everyone. My name is Elodie Voilez. I'm Senior Manager Public Affairs at Lafarge Holcim, the building materials company. And I'm very happy to have this conversation today with Magali Anderson, our Chief Sustainability Officer. Good morning, Magali.
Good morning, Elodie, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
So today we'll be talking about your experience in male-dominated industries, and I will briefly introduce you right after. And we'll be talking about also gender diversity and your tips and tricks and advice for the whole community engaging today in Women in Construction Summit. So in terms of the way we'll proceed, I will ask you a couple of questions, but of course we will be monitoring the Whova questions on the app. So feel free to ask all your questions, no stupid questions there. It's really here to help and support you. So let me first briefly introduce Magali. So as I mentioned, you're a Chief Sustainability Officer at Lafarge Holcim. You're a member of the Executive Committee, and you joined the company in 2016. At the time, you were head of health and safety. In terms of your career, you're a mechanical engineer, and you spent most of your career in the oil and gas industry. And your first position was actually in an oil platform, so that must have been quite an experience that we can discuss. Afterwards you had both functional and operational positions within the oil and gas industries, and I can mention roles such as CEO of Angola for Schlumberger or region head of Europe for the company. One topic that's very dear to you is gender diversity and supporting women up in the corporate ladder. You have a blog called La Pétroleuse, which I invite you also all to look at, where you will find a lot of advice and experience and can be really helpful for you as a woman in your work environment. So I think first question that comes to mind is, what have you learned from all these years in male-dominated industries?
Wow, that's a very wide question. I don't know how many hours we have in front of us. So
just half an hour.
Wow. So I will try to answer, but I think let's go back a little bit about what you said about how I started. So when I started, I was clearly unknown. There was absolutely no woman, but not only at work, not only on the offshore rig, which you would expect, but also at home because we were living in a camp. So it was pretty difficult. It was pretty difficult at the time. We're talking 30 years ago here, no internet, no way to contact your friends via Zoom, or no way to discuss with such a virtual bunch of friends as we are doing right now. So it was quite hard. And each step of my career has been a bit like that, because it was quite often I was the first one. So I had to challenge, sexism, misconceptions of women in the workplace. But in the same time, I had to work on my own lack of confidence. It was not just the others, it was myself as well. And I think what I was missing at that point was a true role model, because I was surrounded by men, so that's the only models I had around me. And I think one of the reasons why I succeeded in doing all of that is because I've got to say, I think I'm pretty strong, but that has become kind of my, I like Elodie saying, yes, you are. But I think that has become my new fight, or it's been new for maybe 10 years actually, that it should not be a prerequisite. It should all be about competency, about talent, about hard work, but we shouldn't think that being strong should make the difference. So now that I've said all of that, I go to your question, Elodie, and I would say, my key learning would be looking at me. I consider myself as a pioneer, and thinking of the fact that I'm not sure I'm a good example myself because I've been copying others. I think my first key learning would be we should not ask women to act like men. And I mean that because true diversity will only happen if we accept that we can have a different mindset and different leadership styles. My other key learning would be we can all act at our level, no matter which level you are in. Okay, now I'm at executive level, so maybe it's a bit easier for me, but I've been acting every single step of my life. And as you said, Elodie, I've been passionate about gender diversity for a long time. So let's not wait for something big happen from somebody else. And finally, I would say we have to be totally intolerant when it comes to sexism and unconscious bias. And by the way, we all have unconscious bias because of the way we were raised. I have unconscious bias as much as anybody else. The only difference is I've learned to recognize them and I've learned to fight them myself. And I think when we allow that to take place, that can create huge damages, and we really need to all be together in there.
Okay. So you kind of touched a bit, maybe we can dive in a bit more. Our industry is clearly male dominated, although things are changing. So good morning, everyone.
About hard work, but we shouldn't think that being strong should make the difference. So now that I've said all of that, I go to your question, Elodie, and I would say, my key learning would be looking at me. I consider myself as a pioneer, and thinking of the fact that I'm not sure I'm a good example myself because I've been copying others. I think my first key learning would be we should not ask women to act like men. And I mean that because true diversity will only happen if we accept that we can have a different mindset and different leadership styles. My other learning would be we can all act at our level, no matter which level you are in. Okay, now I'm at executive level, so maybe it's a bit easier for me, but I've been acting every single step of my life. And as you said, Elodie, I've been passionate about gender diversity for a long time. So let's not wait for something big happen from somebody else. And finally, I would say we have to be totally intolerant when it comes to sexism and unconscious bias. And by the way, we all have unconscious bias because of the way we were raised. I have unconscious bias as much as anybody else. The only difference is I've learned to recognize them and I've learned to fight them myself. And I think when we allow that to take place, that can create huge damages, and we really need to all be together in there.
Okay. So you kind of touched a bit, maybe we can dive in a bit more. Our industry is clearly male dominated, although things are changing, I find it. I've been in the industry for 6 years and it has a bit changed, to be honest, even in the last years. But what can we do at all levels to improve the gender gap balance in our industry?
So there's many things we can do. First of all, we need to recruit women. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes I tell you, when I see some of the recruiting ads passing where only men and good old man club type of thing, you feel like, not sure if I was a young, fresh out of university, I would feel that this is a job for me. So we need to recruit women, and then we need to keep them. And I know it sounds obvious, but what do we do to keep women? First of all, they need to feel comfortable. They need to be in a nice environment, out of sexism, etc. And I just would like to zoom on one point, though, which I think is very important, is the promotion. Statistics are actually showing that it does not happen naturally. If we look at the number of women who get promoted versus total talent pool, it's usually lower than men. And one of the reasons is because of what I said earlier, they have a different leadership style. So we don't necessarily think automatically of them. So let me give you one tip. Something I've been doing for many years, very successfully, is when I'm looking for someone to strengthen my team, or when we are looking at succession planning, etc., I always ask HR to have at least one female candidate. And it sounds a bit silly, but you will notice in our industry, quite often you are only being presented male candidates. And the reason is because they're the obvious one. They're the one that we know. They're the names that come to our mind when we think of succession. But what I do by doing that is I force HR to go and look for those other talents, the one that we don't think of. Like I call them my silent, talented ladies, and there are plenty of them. We just don't know them. So, and I'm super strict about it. I completely block the system. Until that happens, I refuse to do any interview, etc. Then once I have my lady or ladies, sometimes even, you never know, on the starting line, well, I don't do any positive discrimination. I just do normal selection process, and then she wins or she loses. I mean that, but at least she's in the race. And there's one excuse. I mean, if you want to upset me, come to me and say, sorry, Magali, no female candidate. Not true. There's no female candidate because you didn't go and look for them, because your job announcement was crap, full of bias, because you were not looking for the right profile, whatever. But it is never true. That is, I still hear it a lot, and I jumped every time I hear it. So, and then I was saying, we need to look at it at all levels of the organization, because when we talk about women in the industry, there's a lot of discussion about how do we break the glass ceiling, et cetera, et cetera. I will throw to you a question. What about truck drivers? And, what about all these women that are part of our industry on the work floor, on the construction site, et cetera? What about them? And I think we need to really work on that. So let me talk about truck drivers, because I'm super passionate about it. Elodie could tell you, I always talk about truck drivers. This is one that for me makes no sense whatsoever. There's nothing stopping a woman from driving a truck. Modern trucks, everyone can drive them. No, you don't need to be super muscly, etc. Everyone can drive them. It's a fantastic opportunity for women to get a good job with a good salary, being autonomous, etc. Safety-wise, way better. And I was head of health and safety, and I know what I'm talking about. However, and I forgot, there's a huge challenge in terms of finding talents, where there's a big lack of truck drivers across the world, everywhere. But then, still, we only have 4% of female truck drivers in France. Why? There's no reason. I mean, I can't find a single reason. Yeah, maybe in some parking area, you could have a better toilet for women, fine. But that's about it, right? And so it's purely 100% cultural. So we are in 2020. How can we block by a cultural thing across the industry, across the world, in every single country? How can we be blocked to have women behind the wheel? So we have launched a Women on Wheel program, which is exactly to try to fix that. Again, I love that program. I'm passionate about it. If you want to contribute, just contact me separately. I can talk about women truck drivers for hours, really, literally hours.
So thank you, Magali. At least we have two topics, two very easy things that we can do in the industry to promote gender diversity. So that's great. Now, if we come back to the current situation, because clearly this is impacting all of us, and also simply because in such time of crisis, we all have a tendency to stay in our comfort zone and to keep things the way they are, because let's not change anything at the moment. What's really striking me is you've managed to calm up and to commit Lafarge Holcim to a climate pledge to be net zero for the company. And it really strikes me that it's in certain times that you've come out with this. So can you just share about how this was possible and what kind of management skills you derive from it, and that can be helpful for others?
So let's start from about a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, when Jan Jenisch, the CEO of the company, offered me the job. And my answer to him was, Jan, if I take that job, it's because I want to save the planet. Actually, I should say save the humanity. Planet will always be all right. The humanity is in trouble. I want to save the humanity. If I make Lafarge Holcim looks good on the way, that's a collateral effect. And I think it was important to say that from the start, to show that I truly wanted to do that. And if he was not ready to go on that ride with me, he better not give me the job. So I stated very clearly my ambition from the start. And then I started working. I mean, the COVID is telling us we have to move. I mean, we knew it the last 1 or 2 years, there was a big awareness and a lot of people understanding much better about sustainability, understanding why it's important to act now. And I think COVID just came and put another layer of, yes, we have to do it now. We need to, I think everybody's familiar with the hashtag, at least in our industry, of Build Back Better, right? So we can't miss that opportunity. That's impossible. So I started working on the pledge, and it was quite complicated. I had about 100 people working on it, from everywhere, from innovation, and I think it was really thinking quite out of the box for some of them. So there was a lot of, I know we've never done anything like it, but we need to go for it. So it was very interesting, and you need quite some resilience. But also what I was doing is making sure all the ExCo and CEO dropped the word pledge in their office almost every time I was passing by there. Oh, by the way, I'm still working on the pledge. What do you think of the pledge? Pledge. Making sure that the pledge would not come up as a surprise after 1 year. Oh, by the way, what do we do with pledge? That I was getting their buy-in as early as possible. So it was not that easy, but I think what's important here and what women really bring to the table is most of them, I hate this caricature, women are like this, men are like this. I certainly don't want to say that, but we bring a new perspective. We think out of the box. We are super resilient, and at least for me, but I think many women are like that. We are solution driven, So every time I was finding a roadblock, and they did find a few on the way, I would try to understand what happened. Why is that roadblock? Why is that person uncomfortable with the pledge? What can I do to make him or her comfortable with it? So it was a full year of work. I'm extremely proud of the work we did with the team. It was incredible. And I think I would say, if I had to conclude, I would say, as women, and maybe even more particularly as executive women, we need to allow ourselves to think differently. We need to question the status quo. And there is a quote from Christiana Figueres. I'm a huge fan of Christiana Figueres, who is a lady who is behind the COP21 signature, the Paris Agreement. One thing she said is, impossible is not a fact, it's an attitude. So let's have the attitude that we all want to change the world.
Okay. So thank you for this insight. I think it's very helpful to hear that we bring, as female, we bring something different to the table, and we need diversity and mixity in both ways, and that's great to hear. If you're a young professional starting in our industry, what would be your advice and your tips to drive your career forward?
Well, first, I would congratulate you for choosing an incredible industry, which is evolving so much and so needed for everybody. And I have 2 daughters who are in their mid-20s, 25 range. And basically, I have that talk with them quite regularly. And I think when you start your career, men, women, it's the same. The first thing, you need to gain the trust of your people, because you are new, you don't know, you don't understand. So you need to have a certain level of humility. The last thing you want is that you build yourself a reputation from the start that people say, oh, she thinks she's better because she's coming from a good university. You have to be careful. But once you've gained that trust, I would say, then show your character, then let it go. Bring your ideas, move things. We need the young generation to shake the industry, to shake us. So you need to bring these new ideas, and you need to be really very resilient. Don't drop them because someone with white hair, I should have white hair, but the lucky thing about being a woman is you do things there, is telling you, nah, will never work, always done it that way. Don't let them bring you down that way.
Okay, great. What about networking? I often hear it's the magic ingredient to go forward. What do you think about it?
So I've always been super strong on internal network, a bit like what I was saying about the pledge, which is working with everybody, making sure I take everyone's opinion, I understand them, and I get the buy-in. So I spend a huge amount of time. Being head of health and safety has helped, because I traveled a lot. I met most of the country CEOs. That's for me super important. I try to be active on platforms such as LinkedIn because I have met incredible people there. And I think it's we're more and more in the virtual world. And unfortunately, we just can't meet everyone we want to meet. I mean, the world is much bigger than France, where I am from, or Switzerland, where I'm sitting now. But I would say there's a network that I really like, and we are launching it with GCCA, the Global Concrete and Cement Association, is a Lenin network, which I think it's a network where women can get together and be comfortable to speak out and to help each other. So I think it's a nice one that we would like to really push forward with GCCA.
Okay, good. Nice to hear. It goes quite a lot with what I heard yesterday in one of the sessions about networking. And actually, networking is not only meeting new people, it's also continuing the links with people you already know. And that's really interesting to hear, because it's not the vision that we all have in networking. Maybe one controversial topic. What about quotas? What is your view on that?
It is controversial. So let's put it straight out there. I am absolutely pro quota, because it's the quickest and most effective way to progress in gender diversity anyway. But I'm also a great believer that your goal, as soon as you put quota, should be to stop them as soon as possible. Because what you want is not need them. But I hear many people against it, and a lot of women are against it, saying, I don't want to be a female quota. And I understand that, except that you will never be a female quota. Or, well, I think I'm actually a female quota, because when they recruited me to be head of health and safety, the headhunter told me they really wanted a woman, because they wanted to increase the number of women at executive level to lead the way for the others. Does it mean I can't do the job? Does it mean no, not at all. So you have to think that companies' only goal, real goal, is to be successful, mainly financially, right? So no company ever would take the risk of putting an unqualified person in a job just because she's a woman. That won't happen. To think it can happen is crazy. So what quota does is that it forces us to think outside the box and to go and look at remember my silent, talented ladies? Those ones. It forces you to look for other candidates who don't necessarily have the profile that you think of. But it doesn't say that you're going to recruit someone incompetent. No one will do that. It doesn't happen in the real world. It happened in philosophical declaration of some people, but not in the true company world. Now, if I think of an example, as I was saying, I'm French, and some of you might know, but about 10, 13 years ago, I think, there was a law that came that is called Law of Koppe-Zimmermann, where you needed to have at least 40% women in the boards. And today in France, 10 years later, there is 43% of women. I think we were like 10% at the time. But what's interesting is the percentage, of course. It's always interesting because that's how we measure success. But what is even more interesting is when you talk to board members, who were usually these white hair people, 50 years old, male, all coming from the same university, etc., is how they say now that a few years along the line, how much more rich the debates are and the ideas and how much value it has brought to the full thing to be so much more diverse. So yeah, absolutely pro quotas.
So I don't see any question from the audience, so come on, people, don't be shy. But I will continue anyway, asking my question, and one that's actually very much concerns me quite well because I'm a young mother. And becoming a mother can be a difficult period in your career. So you're the mother of two girls who today are young adults, but you've gone through what many of us are going through now. How did you manage it?
So I think it was difficult, of course. And by the way, it's because we're women audience mainly talking about women that I accept to answer that question. In any other circumstance, I would say, do you ask that question to a man? And I would refuse to answer, by the way. And that's what you should answer when someone asks you that. How do you do? So, but I can understand fully how women like you, Elodie, who are starting that journey. How old is your baby? 1, 2, 2?
She is 18 months.
18 months, here you are. Frankly, it's difficult. not difficult because you're a woman. It's difficult for any parents. Any parents who have little kids know how difficult it is to balance. I always tell women, make sure you choose the right partner because you need to share help. And clearly I had the right partner. I think my husband has changed more diapers than I have. And happily so. I'm very happy to take care of it. And I don't think I could have been with someone who would have considered me as a whole. Now, some women choose to stop work or lower the career, and I would never blame any woman from doing that because as long as it's a true choice, as long as it's really, truly what you want to do. My dream in life is to take care of my kids. I think if I had done that myself, I would have gone crazy and certainly murdered them way before they reached 10. If it's your choice, fine. But don't let anyone else talking you into that, because there was a study that was made, I don't have it in mind, I think I used it in one of my blog articles, that showed that when you look at kids, grown-up kids, and the ones that have been raised with the working mothers are as good, not to say better, than the ones that have been raised by a non-working mom. So being a working man is not impacting your kids. It's really usually it's a guilty shot that the society, your family, sometimes your partners is putting on you. So you need to get rid of that. What you bring to your kids when you are working is you bring them the external world. You bring them to be a role model, to show them different things. So it's difficult because, again, you have to juggle between professional life and things, but then you need to organize yourself well. So let me give you a very quick tip, but maybe not for 18 months, maybe a bit later. Something that, and maybe it's a French tradition, but something that was always super important to me was dinner time. So I would work like hell all day, running at make sure I'm home for dinner, have an incredible dinner, no TV, no cell phones, no tablet, no nothing, where we would have a true family exchange, true family time. And then once we have done with that, I would go back to work on my computer. But this has created a bond with my kids. And if you could meet my daughters, you would see they're super happy in their skin. They're both doing great. I'm super proud of them.
Great. So I see one question coming in. What's your advice on how to showcase the value of diversity to your leaders?
There's a lot of studies. So, I'm sure the speakers have talked about the studies, but there's millions of studies. We used some for GGCA just a couple of weeks ago, the Global Concrete and Cement Association, that really truly show how a diverse team, the companies with diverse team at executive level do much better. For example, in financial crisis, there were studies after 2008 crisis, and I'm sure that there will be some now after which companies went out better of COVID. I'm sure you can take example which countries did better in managing COVID. There's been a lot of articles on that, but also there's many statistics on when you take an innovation team. What's innovation all about? It's all about finding super new ideas. It's not going to happen if you take a team of people who all have exactly the same profile. And again, I don't have the statistics. I'm not really good with statistics, but I think if I remember well, you have twice as many innovation coming out from a diverse team than a non-diverse team. So I think you find a lot of material out there, which I'm sure we could maybe find a way to post to you if you want. But it has been proven statistically by a lot of studies in the past.
Okay. Another one coming as well. How can we retain female talent in the industry and stop them from leaving?
So, I said earlier that I didn't spend too much time on it. So I talked about promotion. That's important. The other thing I would talk about is making them comfortable. That's also super important. Make sure they don't suffer any sexism, because one of the issues we have with sexism is that we sometimes dismiss something that looks like a small joke, a small comment, but depending on the circumstances, some women can take it, really can be hard for some of them. So when I was CEO of Angola, for example, I passed on the rules to everybody that any story that happened to any woman, no matter her level, no matter the size of the story, I wanted to be immediately involved. And I remember once well, I had two stories coming up to me, and just the fact that I had a lady coming to my office, listening to her, believing her, and take action, no matter what the action is. Not so much that it really matters. It's really and understanding that you have someone to talk to. And that's one of the issues in our industry is when you're surrounded with men, you don't necessarily know who to talk to, who will understand. I mean, one of the issues she had is someone had painted her boots in pink. You would think it's funny. And some people think, oh, it's a good joke. But when you are the only woman on a rig with 80 men, it's not that funny. And she was not sure a man would understand that because she don't want to be the bitchy girl, you know. So I think it's important. Another thing is if you recruit 10 ladies and you have 10 units, don't put one in each. Put them by 2 or 3. When you are more than one, you can help each other, and that's super important. So I think there is many ways, but paying attention to their desire. You know, another one would be maternity leave. We just talked about babies, but maternity leave is the other one. Making sure women understand that they are completely welcome back when they come back. It seems obvious, but frankly, it's not that much. You know, typical example, what is the only thing, Elodie, I'm asking you the question, my turn. If a woman comes to you from your team and tells you she's pregnant, what's the only answer?
Oh, congratulations.
Perfect. So you know it, great. How come so many women are so hesitant to go and see their manager to announce their pregnancy? How many people and many men would come with that answer first? How many will say, oh, damn, how am I going to organize a team? How long are you going to be gone for? Etc. It's all of this we have to work on. There's not magic stick. We need to work on each and every of these little details, which are very far from being details.
Okay. Another question is, what advice would you give if you were starting out on your career again?
I'm actually quite happy with what I've done myself, so I wouldn't do anything differently. But I think I've kind of answered that question when you said, what would I say to young people starting? I would say, I think maybe what worked the most for me is the fact that I was always passionate by what I was doing. I never took a job thinking of with a career perception. I was really, each of my job, I tried to do it the best I could, try to bring new ideas, try to transform my job, but never really looking like a career person. So I think that for me, at least, it worked well.
Okay.
Are we running out of time?
I think we're just right on time. It's 10:20 BST, so